All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jay Hall, and I am the Legislative Policy Director and General Counsel for the Kansas Association of Counties. And the reason for this brief webinar today is we wanted to talk about, just very briefly, the the workplace issues that have come up as a result of coronavirus and kind of how we can address those at the county level to make sure that we are obviously keeping our workplace safe and obviously also making sure that that everyone is safe. I want to start by first saying that while the impetus and kind of the reason for this webinar has obviously been COVID-19 and some of the challenges that have come up as a result of COVID-19. A lot of the things that I'm going to say here are not going to necessarily be COVID-19 specific. And that's because we as counties have an obligation to our county staff and county employees to make sure that they have a safe working environment, that environment is not hostile, that we're doing everything that reasonably we can to make sure that the county employees can come to work and do their job in a safe and a reasonable environment without threats to themselves and their families and things like that. And so that's the reason that we're actually having this webinar here today, is we just want to make sure that it's clear to everyone that that's what counties are about, and also make sure that we are taking steps to ensure that county employees are in fact safe and protected even while they are doing their jobs. This obviously is also not intended to take a position on things as far as what should be done in relation to COVID-19 or in relation to other issues that may come up before counties. This isn't necessarily taking a position on anything, because there are always two sides to every issue. What this does do, though, is make sure that once a decision has been made and the county has taken a position, that again, county employees are in a position where they can safely go about their duties without fear of threat and harm to themselves or to their family. And really the reason that we came to this conclusion and started working on this particular webinar was after a conversation, and I know that a lot of you have probably seen the articles that were coming out earlier this summer about a lot of local health professionals, not just here in Kansas, but throughout the country, that were leaving their positions. And in a lot of those situations, those individuals were leaving those positions as a result of receiving threats, either to themselves or to their family, and just walking away from those positions as a result of of being in those situations. And so I started talking to, we started talking internally at KAC about that. And Dennis Creasel with the local health departments contacted us with concerns as well. And we really got together on this on more of an employee protection and employee safety basis, because it's really important to remember that regardless of how popular or unpopular a decision is, once it becomes the duty of an individual to carry that decision out as a part of their job duties, they're protected as an employee to be able to carry that job duty out. And so we really wanted to make sure that our county officials know and understand that. And I think everyone understands that, but just kind of as a reminder that that even during the most contentious situations, we have to always remember that health professionals, just like any other county employee, really should be protected while they are carrying out their duties, just so that we make sure that we know that everybody is able to carry out their duties and do their jobs in a way that allows them to be protected. And really this comes down to a couple of things. The first one is that obviously you don't want to create a work environment that is unsafe or hostile. And the reason for that is twofold. One, it's hard to do your job in a hostile or dangerous work environment. So that's number one, is that you lose productivity when you are in a hostile environment. But probably even more important than that is the fact that workplace safety really does play a huge role in the workplace, and this really does put the county at risk if county officials and county employees are put into positions where they are subject to threats or violence, or they are worried about whether or not they can live their lives in a safe way as a result of being threatened, or having people that are hostile to a particular position that are against what they're trying to do and carrying out their job duties. And so to that end, um, we put together a we put together an item, or a resolution, a sample resolution rather, that really talks about some of these issues. And I'm just going to go over this sample resolution. And this sample resolution is just that. It is a sample resolution. It is not by any means binding, or anything that we're telling you at KAC that you need to adopt, or you should adopt, or you have to adopt. We're really just looking at this sample resolution in a way of making sure that you have a resource out there, so that if it's something that you want to adopt within your county, you have a starting point to look at and say, well, this is the point we're going to start at in putting together something for our county. And so we drew this sample resolution up actually a couple of months ago. So unfortunately, that figure of 215,000 Americans is now over 250,000 Americans that have perished from COVID-19. But really, just the heart of this is pointing out that the county's interest is in protecting citizens and controlling the spread to protect and support public health. And then we give you an opportunity within the resolution to talk about what steps your county has already taken in the fight against COVID-19, and that those steps were taken in order to balance health and welfare, while also protecting individual freedoms, because we know that every time a county takes any sort of action, we have to really balance the public good against individual freedoms. And sometimes we have to lean to one side or another so that we can protect the public good while also ensuring that everyone can enjoy the maximum amount of freedom. And so we really do also point to the fact that county commissioners, in your unique role as both an elected official and also a policymaker at the county level, but also someone that sits on the Board of Public Health in most cases, you have a responsibility to make sure that all of the steps that you're taking as a board of county health, as well as a policymaker, and also as a public face of your county, that you're making sure that your county employees are safe. And so we talk about that in the whereas clauses, and then we talk about obviously some of the situations where local health professionals have vacated their positions as a result of some of the things that have gone on during the COVID-19 pandemic. And obviously you have the freedom, if you decided to use this particular resolution or something like it, you would obviously update the numbers and the information in here from what we put together back in mid-October. But the resolution itself is actually very straightforward, that public health is important, and that whatever decisions are being made by the public health department or the county health department are made in the interests of and with the support of the Board of Public Health, thereby the county commissioners. Um, and obviously also encouraging and making sure that it's clear that while there may be disagreement about that, that is part of the political process. That the part of the process is that not everybody's going to agree with everything that is decided, and sometimes there are going to be people that are on one side or the other, and they may have a dissenting viewpoint, and they are free to express that dissenting viewpoint. However, I think where this turns is there in point number 3, where the Board of County Commissioners condemns violence and threats of violence, um, especially violence that's politically motivated. And the reason that I think that that's important is that our political process works only if we can have dissenting points of view without those dissenting points of view resulting in violence or threats of violence. This isn't a a military type of area where those who have the the biggest stick, as they say, get to make the rules. This is really a political process, and that's what we're looking for, is to make sure that at all times the political process is being observed, and part of that is making sure that violence and threats of violence, especially that threats of violence that are politically motivated, that those really don't have any place in our form of government. And so goes on to say that the Board of Commissioners agrees that threats, harassment, and bullying and other aggressive behavior towards any county staff are inappropriate and can't be tolerated. And that's important to remember because, as I said, you're really looking to reinforce that this is a workplace safety issue as much as anything else, that it is not an expectation that a county employee would come to work and be threatened or have them or their families threatened or fear any sort of violence or retribution within the community as a result of making decisions within their own personal job. I mean, that's the job is part of who they are, but it is not entirely who they are. They are also a person that's entitled to their private life, and as a result, um, threats of harassment, bullying, and other aggressive behavior, um, those just have no place. And that any incident of that should be reported to local law enforcement for investigation, and obviously, whatever law enforcement determines from that, those are the appropriate steps to take. But that should not be a part of the political process. And then finally, just saying that all county employees, not just our public health employees, but all county employees should be protected from threatening, harassing, and bullying behavior. And like I said, this is not just for this situation with COVID-19, but this is really for any situation. I know as public policy makers, often county employees and commissioners are in positions where you have to do things that maybe sometimes are very popular and at other times aren't popular at all. And in those situations, I think it's important to remember and to remind everyone that all county employees are just doing their jobs, and that they shouldn't be exposed to the threatening, harassing, bullying, and aggressive behavior that unfortunately we've seen pop up all too often over the last several months. And I realize that it's a small minority of people that are resorting to those types of behaviors. But at the same time, I think it's important that we as counties stand up and speak out in favor of saying that that has no place in county government, and particularly has no place in county government here in the state of Kansas, because that is not who we are, and that is not what we are about as county officials, as people that represent the best of what is here in Kansas. And so we really look at this sample resolution as something that can be a starting point for discussion within your counties if you feel that something needs to be done on this issue, or if you feel like something needs to be in the future, appointment discussed in different situations. I think it's important to always remember that as county officials, um, we really do have two jobs, particularly as commissioners. You have two jobs will be had within the community, and if you set a tone of inclusiveness and the ability to, if you don't think, not all the time, some people will go their own way, but certainly you have the ability as a policymaker and as a public facing person to set that tone. And so that's really the impetus for why we put this particular item together. Again, it's not something that we are that you have to use, but it's something that's out there as a model for you to use if you need if you need a place to start on these types of things. At this point, I would open the floor to any questions. If there are questions, I think you can either type them in the chat, or if you wanted to raise your hand and had a question, I think Kim is able to turn on your microphone so that you can ask a question, or you can type it into the chat or the Q&A box. And then Dennis, if you had anything to add, I would certainly welcome any of your comments on that as well.
I am not seeing any questions yet. Jay, and Dennis has made a comment. You covered the resolution well, but I'll stand for questions if people have any.
And while we're here, I'll throw a plug out for the new commissioners orientation in January. I encourage all new commissioners to sign up, and even some of our veteran commissioners. You may want to peek in on a session or two, because we're going to be covering a lot of things. I think we have a session on public health and things like that, but I think we also have a lot of sessions that'll be good refreshers on things like open meetings and county liability and records, and just all sorts of different things that'll be covered during the new commissioners orientation, that may serve as a great reminder, because we've had a crazy 2020, but we can never forget the basics of that. And so I would encourage everyone to, even if you don't necessarily attend, you may also want to encourage any new commissioners you have within your county to attend. It looks like we have a question, and it is, how might this resolution be used along with discussion on civil discourse at the county level? Thank you for that question. I think that this resolution could be used certainly in a discussion on civil discourse, because it is important that, and the point I was making about modeling that sort of behavior, if you can model within your commission meeting the sort of behavior to have that civil discourse when you're talking about really controversial and sometimes divisive subject matters like COVID-19 has become. If you can model the behavior of having a civil discourse, even within disagreement, at the county commission level, then I think that spirit can really filter down throughout the rest of the county and into some of the public comments you may receive, and those kinds of things. I see you have a follow-up that, will KAC have any training info on civil discourse for boards? And that's something that we certainly can look into. Right now, we are definitely putting together our trainings for next year, and I know that Kim has been looking for any subject matters that might be of interest to cover. And certainly, I think civil discourse for county commissions, and also just the ability to run meetings with a civil discourse. That certainly is something that we can look into, and I appreciate mentioning the looks like the Kansas Leadership Center as a potential partner. We can certainly look into that. Um, and then Brad has asked, are there any creative ideas on how to regain the public's respect and trust back into local government and our health personnel that has been lost over the past year? The unknown of COVID has certainly created a lot of questions on our ability to do our jobs in the eye of the public. I think that's a great question, and I think one of the things that we have to do is um, and this is something that we can do from both sides, whether you agreed with the things that the different steps that your county took or disagreed. We have to come to a place where we can say, hey, at the beginning of this entire situation, we didn't know a whole lot about coronavirus. I mean, we kind of just we ended up with a problem, and we didn't have a clear playbook on the solution because we frankly did not know enough about the virus itself in the early going. And so we did what we are expected to do in those situations. We did the best we could with the information that we had at the time that we had it. And some of those things that we did, um, hindsight says, we could have done this better for this reason or that reason, or instead of doing this, we should have done that. But the understanding and where I hope the public sees things in the future is that everyone was doing the best that they could with the information that they had at the time. And that's never going to be perfect because we don't know what we didn't know at the beginning. I mean, there's still some things that we don't know. And so we're still working from an ever evolving playbook to try and make sure that we're doing the best that we can in these particular situations. And hopefully, as the emotion behind COVID-19 winds down, people will start to see there was no secret evil plot to get people sick or to ruin people's businesses or things like that. We were trying to do the best that we could in the situation that we were given, and some of the decisions that were made, in hindsight, they could have been better. Some of them we didn't know what to do, and we did the best that we could in those situations. And I think that's how you regain trust, is to just simply be honest with the public that we did the best that we could in the situation that we were given. And as the situation evolved, we continued to do the best that we could. And sometimes that meant changing course, and other times that meant staying on the same path. It just depends on what we initially did and what we learned as we went through that process. Looks like we have another question. Does KAC have any input or legal guidance regarding maintaining decorum and civility during the public comment portion of the meeting? I I would say my best legal guidance is, and this is somewhat legal, somewhat logical guidance, is just saying to people that you're not going to tolerate any break in decorum and civility during the public comment process. And that can be something as simple as name calling and things like that, because again, those types of things tend to escalate if you allow one person to make very personally disparaging remarks about someone else. Then that person that the remarks were made about is going to want to defend themselves, and then it just kind of starts to snowball. So I would say the best advice I can give on maintaining decorum is to be very strict about not allowing individuals to break that decorum, and make it clear from the very beginning that individuals will not be allowed to break the decorum, whether they're expressing opinions that you support, or whether they are supporting opinions that you do not support. Either way, you have to be very, very strict about that, because when you're not strict about it, it becomes very, very difficult to reel that back in as time proceeds. And it looks like Allen County has implemented Facebook Live meetings so the public can see and hear all that goes on during their meetings, and that's just being transparent. And I agree with that 100%. The transparency is very hard to argue with, because when you are transparent and you are doing things that are within the public's view, even if they don't necessarily like the decision, if they can see the process, I think that's something that really does enhance the public trust. I think one of the challenges of COVID-19 has been balancing the need for privacy for individual medical information and the need to be transparent about why you're making the decisions you're making within your community. And that's been a challenge, obviously, and I would, if anybody has ideas on how they've done that specifically within their community, I would welcome that. But I think that that's definitely a good point that's being made, that being transparent is just so important in gaining the public's trust, and doing everything that we can to be transparent about the decisions and the information that we have and how we're coming to those decisions is just critically important to gaining the public's trust. And it looks like, and I'll read Dennis's comment for those of you that didn't see it in the chat. One idea would be to formally meet as the local Board of Health as an agenda step, even post COVID. Show the interaction between the board and your local health officer administrator. Let the people hear your questions, hear the response from your local experts, and show how you evaluate that detail. As Bruce Symes noted, I think transparency is your best tool to rebuild trust, but it will take time. You've got folks out there mad at local health for giving them orders on what they can or can't or shouldn't do, and others mad because they feel their local leaders ignored health advice and just did what was expedient. And again, I would say that that's certainly very practical advice from Dennis. And I think it is important to remember that we've come through this entire process, and we've all been learning during this process. And I think, again, honesty is the best, is really, honesty and transparency are going to be your best tools to just say, these are the things we knew. We made our best decisions based on that information. And we really tried to make it work as best we could. As we got new information, we modified things in ways that were commiserate with that information, and we just worked from there. I think that's the only way you can really build on the public trust and make sure that the public knows how you worked through these problems. Do we have any other questions from either from other panelists, or comments from panelists, or from any of the attendees? If not, then oh, and it says the sample template will be shared on the KAC website. And then we've also got a comment from Mara Chambers that says, separate the Board of County Commissioners meeting from the County Board of Health meeting, including a recorded start and stop time, separate minutes, etc. I think that's always good, so that it makes it easier to be transparent as well, because then you have a lot of information that you can separate out into the Board of Health, where you can have the separate meeting minutes and all of those things, so that if people are just looking for that information, it's easy for them to find. And that the resolution, a copy of that will be on our website here later this afternoon. Thank you to everyone that has attended. And if you have other questions, feel free to reach out to KAC. We are always here to help and to answer any questions that you may have. And I believe this recording will also be available either on our website or on our YouTube page or both. So if you want to look back at this, or if other commissioners want to look back at this, feel free to do so. And as always, we are available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much. And to everybody, have a happy holiday season. And we look forward to serving you again in the new year.